What's that look like? Detailed explanation of this craft. Reflective gold panels, cockpit windows designed to prevent radar waves from entering the interior, white composite panels.
I'm going to be very blunt. If we got people who are firsthand who are coming forward, I would ask you to reconsider.
In this case, if you have a visitor in your backyard, you have to respond immediately, and the danger may be imminent. And therefore, you might, if after October 29th, when 3i Atlas comes closest to the sun, if it doesn't emerge along the expected path on the other side of the sun, then, the stock market will crash, and the geopolitical order will immediately be disrupted because people will not feel that they are protected by their governments. Again.
Dude, what's going on?
Crazy Robot Man. I don't even know what to think about that. Wild. Welcome back to the Gabriel Speaks Show, everyone. I'm so glad you're here. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to make sure you get more updates like this and our channel grows. I really appreciate y'all for hanging out and spending some time with me this evening. We're going to go over a few things. We're going to talk about this recent appearance of UAPGerbs on Danny Jones. Super awesome. We're going to review some of that. We're going to talk about the 3i Atlas again because someone's out there really kind of scaring the crap out of some people. We're going to go over these PSI games that just happened, and we're going to talk about some of that stuff. Really cool interaction I'm going to share with y'all. So let's get started. Let's get going. We're going to start out with recently UAPGerbs was on Danny Jones, and this in particular, he gets into some Stephen Greer stuff and some Jake Barber stuff. Now, if y'all don't remember, I recently had on Eric Hecker. Eric Hecker stated that at his 2023 UAP conference that Jake Barber was there to potentially do wet work. If you're not familiar with what wet work means, that is assassination cleanup work. So pretty fascinating stuff. Let's check out what UAPGerbs has to say on this situation.
The CIA Directorate of Science and Technology Deputy Director Carl Wolf began what's called the CIA's Office of Global Access. The Office of Global Access has been accused by myself, by great reporters like Christopher Sharp at the Liberation Times, who's incredibly brilliant, of running foreign crash retrieval programs and working with JSOC, Joint Special Operations Command. So one must ask, was this an element of JSOC retrieval teams? Of course, before he went public, Jake Barber, under a pseudonym, wrote the Sentinels of Ether little manuscript where he talked about kind of blue on blue retrieval team action and a JSOC unit firing upon U.S. forces that were interested in, craft retrieval and working in UFO programs. So what are these special operators? It's a really interesting question because there's tons of testimony of dedicated rapid reaction units.
What was the guy's name again?
Jonathan?
No, the other guy. This guy who went on Jesse talked about the psionic stuff.
Oh, Jake Barber.
Jake Barber. Yeah, the Jake Barber stuff was apparently corroborated with the Michael Herrera stuff because he was. Is it true that he was going in to try to
red team,
fucking red team. I hate that word. He was basically trying to catch these whistleblowers and prosecute them for leaking classified information, and then he saw Michael Herrera talk, and then he was basically oh my god, I was a part of this.
Yeah. And
that's when he allegedly decided to join the other side and blow the whistle himself.
This is pre whistleblowing, so he knew Herrera before he came out. he knew Jake Barber, but by a different name. And this is when things were just starting to come together. And it appears that Barber was there kind of for the other side. With or without Stephen Greer's knowledge, we don't know. But according to the story, according to the narrative, that is the discussion, the conference where Jake Barber changed his mind, kind of flipped the script, came to the light, got involved with psionics and whatnot. Now, UAPGerbs got into this about this particular whistleblower in the Stephen Greer papers. I did download the Stephen Greer papers. I looked up the whistleblower 10892. The note here says, was on a crash retrieval team at Nellis Air Force Base, encountered ETs during one of the missions. Also, man-made AT PLF tried to abduct him. Well, that's freaking terrifying. PLF tried to abduct him. Now, what's even crazier is this person has some really interesting, like, kind of detailed sketches of some of these different craft. Okay, so here's the first one that caught my eye. I thought this was really interesting. This is like a drawing, I guess, of the actual ETs. Says they look different. Heads were similar. No hair, but wispy eyelashes. Not sure what that means. Thin lips, slight smile. So maybe to make him feel comfortable. I don't know. Light green, blue irises, I think is what that says. A metallic looking clothes. So we get that a lot, like metallic, skin tight looking type garb. A slight build, but clearly well muscled. Curious about my bucket and my mop gear. Now, if you haven't served in the military, your mop gear is, excuse me, that's going to be your gear that you use to like protect yourself from biologic weapons, nuclear weapons, chemical weapons, things of that nature. So it's interesting that they would show a real interest in some of that stuff. Here's an image that I thought was really, really crazy. This one right here. Take a look at that, folks. That is a very highly detailed sketch, I guess. It almost looks like a blueprint. You got very detailed explanation of this craft. Reflective gold panels, cockpit windows designed to prevent radar waves from entering the interior, white composite panels, extensive use of rivets, blinking red light, blinking green light, cylinder black, metallic gray, brushed aluminum. So this almost looks like, in fact, it says it right there before I even got to it, ARV. So either an alien or anomalous recreated vehicle, an alien recreated vehicle. From what I understand, the A is in debate as far as what that can mean. So this was a vehicle created by the United States government based on some kind of crash retrieval. That is just absolutely crazy. And again, that looks incredibly detailed for just someone coming up with it off the back of their head, back of their mind, you know. Here's another one. This one looks pretty crazy. This is basically the same craft, but in a computer generated, 3D image what it would look like standing on the outside of it. This is nuts. And this was testimony given again. This was pre-2022 when this testimony was given. Now I'm going to show you another one here that might kind of blow your mind a little bit. If you've been paying attention, Ross Coulthart came out and said the Tic Tac UAP was Lockheed Martin technology and shocked the world. People were going nuts over it, caused a lot of chatter, a lot of debate over whether or not that was true. Take a look at this recreation photo of an ARB. What's that look like? I don't know. That looks pretty darn close to a pill, right? I mean, shrink it up a little bit, add a little kind of haziness because it's going to be moving in some weird kind of way. I don't know. I've heard gravity propulsion. I've heard maybe some kind of aerogel, but something that's going to make it look a little distorted as it travels. And there you go. Wild, wild stuff. It's a very scary journey, whistleblowing, you know, because we've seen it from Matthew Brown's perspective. He's explained it very well that you come forward with this information. You're in the beginning, you're just communicating with staffers. You're not even communicating with the actual elected official. Once you get to communicate with that elected official, you give them that information. And that's essentially it. They're not keeping you in the loop. They're not, you know, updating you. They're not making sure that you're financially okay. They're not making sure your family's okay. They're not making sure you haven't lost your employment or source of income. These are things that people need to survive. Look, I want to whistleblow. I want to do the right thing, but I got a couple kids to feed. And to most of us, we just simply cannot risk that. And that's kind of what he's talking about. And Herrera gets into this a little bit more. Now, I put together kind of a compilation on Ryan Graves because we haven't heard, at least not much from Ryan Graves in a while. And towards the end of this compilation with Ryan Graves, I want you to check out what Michael Herrera just recently within the last week came out and said on X, which was unfortunately very discouraging for the whistleblower community. So let's check this out.
So Americans for Safe Aerospace is a pretty simple concept, and it's a concept that I've been speaking out for a while, which is like we should have situational awareness of what's going on over our heads. And when we do find something that shouldn't be there, it really can fall into two categories. It can either fall into a national security bucket, and we should, you know, treat that seriously and prosecute those threats with our military apparatus, or it's something else. And in the past, the something else category was ignored. As we look closer into that anomalous bucket, we'll find perhaps some things that are related to adversarial spy programs.
In the official world, by emphasizing aviation safety, because especially in those days, they had to have an excuse or a reason to even care. And so if you're telling them this is an aviation safety risk, they have to care, really.
This is something that commercial aviators, military aviators are experiencing, both in our national airspace as well as across the world. It brings other organizations in. It allows for the conversations at high level in government. And that's where we see a lot of progress and momentum being able to be formed based on. And this is what's guided my work with Americans for Safe Aerospace, to provide that haven, to be able to come, share a report, non-judgmental from an aviator. And those reports have really started to guide our public awareness communications. It's started to really shape the legislation that we've advised on in Congress.
Tell me, how much of a threat are UAP to aviation safety, and talk a little bit about that.
And as a tactical aviator, that is the epitome of that. We're managing the most risk and accepting the most risk and operating, to the highest degree possible. But the pressure is still there on commercial aviation as well, because, you have a lot of lives on board. And so really that's all we do as aviators, if you really want to break it down, is accept and manage risk. And so we do that by building processes and procedures that are repeatable and trainable. Yeah, I mean, 737 coming within 500 feet of a black triangle at about 15,000 feet as they were climbing.
Now, this is he runs the website for commercial and non-commercial pilots to make reports. And these are some of the crazy reports he's gotten over the last couple of years.
Nose to nose, 180 degrees out. Both pilot and the co-pilot saw it. Air traffic control had nothing on their radar, described it the same. Centralized, glowing, I believe, blue light on the apexes of the triangle, as well as one in the center that was more purple. Just recently, we had another report of a relatively near miss with the black triangle as well, about 800 feet somewhere else. And there's another one that just popped up with a disc-shaped object that came within about 3,000 feet of a commercial airliner.
Ryan, do you think the gatekeepers of these alleged secret programs are feeling the pressure now to go public, to say what they know?
I have to assume so. There seems to be two factions of those people that you suggested, those that are willing to come forward with the proper protections in place, and those that are simply unwilling to share any of this information. And so going forward, I think we need to look to the Department of Justice, Congress, and the executive branch to be able to provide those protections so that these people that are willing to come forward have the ability to do so without fear of repercussions.
And there it is. I mean, the bottom line is they all most likely want to do the right thing. It's a matter of being able to do the right thing and survive it.
Answering the questions that so many people have, that you have, that other Americans may have?
Well, I think in a conversation like this, there's always a desire for more information. And in an open, unclassified environment, such as that hearing, there's always going to be a limitation without those protections to what these people can say. So ultimately, I think it moved the ball forward, but I think the American people and the people listening were interested in hearing more. And I hope that with the proper protections in place, they will hear more.
If congressional protection is granted, do you think more people will come forward with their personal stories?
I do. I've talked to a number of people that are interested in moving this conversation. They understand the importance of it. They feel a moral and ethical obligation to bring this information forward. But without the proper protections, they have, it's all risk for them right now and essentially no reward. So they don't want to sacrifice their personal or professional lives at this time to move the conversation forward. So I understand that without the proper protections, they're simply not going to be enabled to come forward.
It's amazing that we can send billions of dollars to God knows where for God knows what, but we can't make sure that these whistleblowers, if they're legitimate, that these whistleblowers are taken care of. You can be in the mob and flip and get witness protection program. You're not going to be living rich, but you're going to be taken care of for the rest of your life. But these gentlemen and women that come forward to whistleblow aren't afforded any of that. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Ryan, where do your concerns stand now as far as whistleblowers being willing and able to speak out?
Well, there absolutely is still concern from whistleblowers and even just witnesses. I'll separate those two a little bit because whistleblowers may have classified information they wish to share, where witnesses may have critical information to a national security concern that is of interest to the FBI. I'm not aware of if or how specific any investigation into classified efforts go within the FBI working group. But the work that has been done with the witnesses has been incredibly fruitful. And I think a lot of our witnesses are very appreciative that there is a serious agency that's looking into their
As
concerns.
you probably know, Michael Herrera was the whistleblower who came forward. He's in the Marine Corps. He was on a rescue mission during a natural disaster outside of the States, where he witnessed what looked like a UFO type technology craft being loaded up with crates. At the time he witnessed it, he believed those crates to be full of drugs. Going back to the 23 Greer Conference, Disclosure Conference, Jake Barber notified him that he believed those crates were full of human assets, potentially even children, because apparently they are easier to manipulate into doing this kind of psionic work. Now, Herrera, he didn't add that. That was added later. But his story has not changed. He's been on a bunch of podcasts, and he's faced, I think, a lot of frustration going down this whistleblower road. Let's let him finish here.
In front of a U.S. congressional hearing for almost 2 years. So it's something as a firsthand witness that I feel like I'd have a good impact with that, especially with the unique position I've been afforded to as far as see things in a first-person perspective that 99% of the population probably would never get to see or participate. So I'm going to ask you to reconsider based off of the notion that there have been other people who've held pretty, successful positions within certain agencies, companies that are in this issue that have given actionable intelligence that have ranged from where biologics are stored, where assets are located, where the names of these projects are occurring, and the details associated with that enough to actually gain basically a plan with knowledge and execute it. So the question I always have is, I like how they play dumb, like they don't have any information to go off of, and they want more first-hand people to go forward and to expose themselves. There are many first-hand people I know that have went forward, that have had the skiff meetings, that have provided the actionable intelligence, and they've been screwed royally. Their lives are ruined. Their income, their safety with their families. These guys make really good money. You cannot exercise your skill set elsewhere in this world like you can in some of these programs with some of the top minds and some of the top people that this country has as far as the best and brightest that this country has to offer. When they give that up, they're put in a position where they're trying to figure out how to make stuff work. We have to take action amongst ourselves for our own protection, for our own type of income, right? Which is, if you're working for yourself or your, partner, whatever it is, it's a little bit easier. But at the same time, some of these people don't have the luxury to do that. It exposes yourself to the world of something that sounds crazy, but it's true. And then you're put in a position of trying to fend for yourself. Nobody else in the world understands what you're going through unless it's other people who are wearing the same shoes as you. I would reconsider if you're thinking of coming forward. And the reason being is because you're going to get shortchanged immensely. You're going to be put in a position where you're going to fend for yourself, or you're going to be into a network of other people who are similar, and it's the same thing. It's almost like survival of the fittest to an extent, and I'm sick and tired of people, good people, coming forward, trying to set the record straight, trying to provide evidence, trying to provide details that can allow something to happen, and these lawmakers are sitting on their hands.
Clearly, he's frustrated. He's frustrated because he feels like there is no avenue, there is no path forward for whistleblowers. To even go as far to encourage other whistleblowers to stay where they are and not come forward speaks to just how frustrated he is. I get it. I mean, if I felt like I had given a truth and then kind of been abandoned by the people that, said they wanted it, I might feel some kind of way about that too. We're going to go back to Ryan Graves and Ross Coulthart to finish here. This is their response, just a brief snippet response to the Wall Street Journal report that you all know I was a big fan of.
When a secret program such as a SAT program or a top secret program is exposed, there's very clear procedures of what's done as far as reading potential people in and providing them a debrief of what they experienced so they know the procedures moving forward.
Yeah.
There's not an official policy to read people into a fake UAP program to confuse them.
Look, it's quite clear, Elizabeth, that someone in the Pentagon has tailored what is quite clearly deliberate disinformation just to confuse the public. One of the other things they've done in this story that the Wall Street Journal aired without any kind of sensible investigation was claims that an electromagnetic pulse test weapon was used against an active thermonuclear missile site in 1967.
I believe that this is going to provide them a lot of ammunition to look into some of these claims, which ideally will give them more opportunities to find people that they can speak to determine if this is true or not, and whether the American people have been deceived, even in a small part.
Tell him, Ryan. I mean, it's crazy to think that they would be promoting a program that would be lying to airmen, telling them that UFOs are real when they're not, telling them they're going to be working on stuff that they're not going to be working on. I wasn't in the Air Force, I was in the Army, but I can tell you it's the most ridiculous sounding thing I ever heard of. And then to add a giant EMP. Listen, they want us to believe that they had an EMP before EMPs were created. And use this EMP and shot it down a nuclear silo in our country with live nuclear weapons and our own personnel manning the silo just to see what would happen. And then they later were very quickly able to get the power back up. That's not how EMPs work. If an EMP takes out a device that requires power, you don't just power it back up. It's going to have a problem. You're going to need to replace parts. That story is incredible to believe. And the further disappointment is they say in the second part of that article, they're going to come out and provide the proof. They don't. They don't provide any proof of either of those claims. So it's just as they cry against a UFO community, for listening to stories that have lack of evidence, lack of proof, they do the same exact thing in a completely biased story to discredit the UFO phenomena in general. It's absolutely crazy. It's almost as crazy as Avi Loeb going around calling a comet alien technology that's going to come into our atmosphere and possibly invade. That the stock market is going to crash. Folks, I'm not making this up. Let's check out Avi Loeb here.
In this case, if you have a visitor in your backyard, you have to respond immediately, and the danger may be imminent. And therefore, you might, if after October 29th, when 3i Atlas comes closest to the sun, if it doesn't emerge along the expected path on the other side of the sun, then, the stock market will crash, and the geopolitical order will immediately be disrupted because people will not feel that they are protected by their governments against the threat from the sky. Yeah. If anyone comes to visit us from outer space, they don't care much about the way we split territories on this rock. that we were born on, that we call Earth. So it would be an issue for humanity as a whole. And it requires cooperation, decide what the intent of that visit is in case it poses a risk to Earth, because one can imagine that it's either a hostile visit or a friendly visit. If it's a friendly visit, we would welcome it with open arms, but it could also be a Trojan horse that brings a risk to Earth. I think there should be a new approach, which is to examine materials on the surface of rocks that arrive to us from other stars. And of course, if any of these objects happens to be technological, then we can learn much more. We can perhaps reverse engineer the kind of technology being used, or learn about the science that goes beyond what we know right now.
So, Professor Loeb, your recent paper suggests that this object might actually be alien technology rather than just another comet. What exactly about the speed, the trajectory, the behavior leads you to consider this as a possibility?
Well, first, it's relatively bright for its distance, implying that if it's a solid object, it has to be 20 kilometers in diameter. That's twice as big as the giant asteroid that killed the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. And the previous objects we saw from interstellar space were only hundreds of meters in size. More importantly, the trajectory is very unusual. It's aligned with the orbit of the Earth around the sun. And the chance of that happening is 1 in 500. And then the timing of its arrival is very fine-tuned, because it comes very close to Jupiter, to Mars, and to Venus. And the chance of that happening is 1 in 20,000. And when it will come closest to the sun, the Earth would be on the opposite side, so we won't be able to observe it. That's the point in time when it can do a maneuver with the aid of the sun's gravity. And that will happen on October 29th. And I already heard from a fan that he is trading options against the volatility of the markets, the stock market, with an expiration date because of October 29th, because if it's alien tech, that would change the future in quite dramatic way. It will have a huge, all bets are off. This visitor came from interstellar space, and it's possible that, it targeted the inner solar system for a technological reason. I wrote a paper last week that there is actually a spacecraft that is orbiting Jupiter. It's called Juno, and it's at the end of its life. The plan was to send it straight into Jupiter in September 2025, because the mission has ended. But what I realized is that if instead of giving it a push so that it ends its life inside Jupiter, you give it a push away from Jupiter, if the push is sufficient, then it will actually intercept the orbit of 3I Atlas, this new object, in March 2026, when it will come very close to Jupiter. And on Tuesday this week, just a few days ago, I had a phone call from Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna. I mentioned this to her, and she wrote a letter to NASA on Thursday last week, just 2 days ago, in which she encourages NASA to look into the possibility of using Juno as a probe.
Okay, so we're just going to pause it here. So, yes, Representative Luna, she did post on X. I'm urging NASA to extend the Juno mission to study interstellar object 3I Atlas. Thank you, Avi Loeb, for your continued dedication to exploring our universe. We must seize this opportunity for groundbreaking discovery. Those weren't just words. It wasn't just a posting on X. I have actually viewed the official letter to the president asking to reach out to NASA and make this happen. And she also wrote a letter to NASA as well. saying basically Juno's equipped to deal with the mission. And here's 3i Atlas's trajectory. You can see it's not coming close to Earth. Here's an actual post from the comet itself, 3i Atlas. I found rather humorous, but you can see from the video image in the right, that's the trajectory. Okay, you got the sun obviously in the center of our solar system there, and 3i Atlas moving around. So because of the timing of the planets, that is a reason why it is crossing so many, near so many planets.
This object has just been discovered. 3i Atlas was discovered on July 1st by the NASA-funded Atlas survey. It was discovered using their telescope at Rio Hurtado in Chile, and it was first detected as a speck of light moving relative to background stars. We collected a good amount of data, more than 100 observations. We know its trajectory fairly well. We know it came from outside the solar system. Right now, it's inside the orbit of Jupiter, and is headed for its closest pass to the sun at the end of October. That's going to be barely inside the orbit of Mars, and then it's going to keep going on its way out of the solar system. From images, we also saw that this object is active, which means that around the nucleus there is some coma, which is an indication that this object is in fact a comet. Right now, it's hard to say how big this object is because being active, the brightness that we see is partially due to the size of the object, but also is partially due to the activity, and so we cannot really pinpoint the nucleus size directly. We have to better understand how active this object is, and then we can refine the size estimate and get a good idea. It's moving at a velocity of about 135,000 miles per hour, so it's going really fast. For that distance from the sun, this is really exceptional. You have to be an interstellar object to be going that fast at that distance from the sun. This object comes nowhere close to the Earth. It's going to make a pass close-ish to Mars at about 30 million kilometers, or roughly 20 million miles from the red planet, but nowhere close to the Earth. It's not going to make a major close approach to any of the planets. So no risk from this object, just a scientific opportunity. The more data we get, the better we can measure the position of this object as it travels through the solar system and it moves out of it. But we also want to collect physical characterization data. For instance, we would like to understand better what the size of this object could be, the composition, the levels of activity. We're just bracing ourselves to get as much information as possible. We're really excited about this object. So far, we've discovered 3 interstellar objects. The first one was Oumuamua in 2017, the second one, Borisov in 2019, and now we have the third one, 3i Atlas. So it's a rare opportunity, and as a scientific community, we want to collect as many data as possible to characterize this object and learn as much as we can.
So that's the official NASA stance. Now, with a stance like that, I can't imagine that they would be too opposed to using Juno for the mission. I did a little bit of research on Juno. It is towards the end of its mission. It's been collecting some really fascinating data on Jupiter, and Jupiter, the data we collect there has a gigantic impact on what happens on Earth, can even impact our weather here on Earth. So the study there has been very important. I don't know enough about their final mission. Now, Avi Loeb says they're going to, just slam it into Jupiter. I tend to think it's a little bit more than that. I know they're going to essentially collect as much data as they can during that process. What worries me about this whole thing, I'll be honest, like Avi Loeb, it just seems like Avi Loeb is fear-mongering. I used to really like Avi Loeb. Now I'm not so sure, because I feel like what's happening is he's taking advantage of the heightened awareness of things in our cosmos. He's building on this Oumuamua kind of, thing, and he is stating that this interstellar object could definitely be alien technology that's going to slow down behind the sun, that when that happens, the stock market's going to crash, and it's going to be fear. The governments, people aren't going to trust the government anymore. And it's just going to be all this crazy, crazy, terrible stuff. And so that to me, it just makes me think like he's just trying to get the funding, right? He needs that money for those research papers. Fear mongering for dollars, I'm not a fan. And I think that's what was going on here with Avi Loeb. And it's a real disappointment, because it's not to say that there isn't something to this research, but the likelihood of this being an actual alien craft, I think, is somewhere around 0.000001 or something. So it's a comet. And the reason it doesn't have a normal tail has to do with the way it's traveling. And you can find this out just by doing some research, that it's a comet. And NASA, in this instance, has the best scientific explanation for what it is we're dealing with. And I think that Avi Loeb's going to get a bunch of money shoveled at him because of this fear tactic where, well, we got to find out, because if we don't find out and it's alien, then what are we going to do then? I'm also concerned it's going to take Juno off maybe an important mission of what's going on with Jupiter. So I don't know, call me an old curmudgeon or whatever, but I just don't think it's worth the money and the tasking that it's going to take to send Juno after a comet. That's my take. I do not hold any scientific degree, so make of it what you will. Let's go down memory lane here. I'm going to play a few of the best 1990s UFOs. Here we go. Oh man, if that doesn't make you want to put on some X-Files and watch Mulder and Scully chase after some UFOs, I don't know what will. I hear there's going to be a relaunch. I hope they don't butcher it. I hope it's good. I hear it's supposed to be good, but they always say that about a show before you really know if it's going to be good or not. Let's carry on here. I'm going to get back to whistleblowers because we were watching UAPGerbs on Danny Jones, and UAPGerbs gets into this a little bit about which whistleblowers you can trust and kind of what he makes of the whole whistleblower scene, especially given the recent skiff flu with Luna we talked about on my last episode, where they had the skiff reserved, and all of a sudden, all these guys get sick at the same time, and one of them's busy doing something else, yada, yada, yada. Bunch of bullshit, essentially. So let's take a look at what UAPGerbs has to say about what his understanding of the current whistleblower landscape is.
You know, that is when I started to look at some of these whistleblowers, you know, like, is this guy legit?
Who do you look at skeptically?
How do I know if I want to trust this guy?
Right.
I mean, a lot of them, man. I don't know. I don't know if I mean, Grush seems pretty legit.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, there's so many of them. And, you know, some of the guys, like, I think the guy that Jesse interviewed, I think it was a Marine. You mentioned him earlier.
Michael.
Michael. He was the guy who went down into the base and they were like, brought through all these like compartments, and they finally got to this area where there was this like crazy thing. He explains this craft. Randy. I think people like them, you know, it's people that like aren't selling anything and that seem to be disconnected from it. They seem to be the most credible, and they're like kind of like one-off interesting things.
UAPGerbs has some fantastic work. In fact, I think what I'm going to do here is share just a little bit. You know, the underground bases have been a big topic as of late, especially since we figured out around the Bush era that we knew there was trillion, with a T, dollars missing, unaccounted for, and the person in charge was told kind of not to worry about it. Is now speculating maybe that went to underground bases and underground tunnels. So we're going to check a sample of UAPGerbs' work here. And it's actually a great piece on the tunnels. Now, the entire episode I'm going to link down below, but we're just going to check out this brief part on the tunnels. It's really good stuff. Check this out.
The idea of a major network of underground tunnels connecting dumbs nationwide is often scoffed at. I have no idea if the entire nation's stiffs are connected via tunnel system, but a strong argument can be made complex systems of interconnecting stiffs exist in the American Southwest and East Coast. After all, in a document obtained via FOIA by Dr. Richard Sauter, we even have hard numbers from the military-industrial complex of the estimated number of total personnel needed to build and operate a deeply buried hundreds of mile-long tunnel system. And this is the order of 7,800 to 8,700 people. And we also have a hard estimate for the total expenses associated with constructing, operating, and maintaining such a system. The neighborhood of $17 billion over a 10-year period. Many such acknowledged tunnel systems exist, like the Department of Energy's sprawling tunnel network below the Nevada Test and Training Range, but let's continue to explore the feasibility of massive tunnel systems connecting bases dozens or hundreds of miles apart. The technology for such undertakings does indeed exist. The most likely candidates are nuclear submarines and tunnel boring machines. Tunnel boring machines are huge cylindrical mechanical boring machines that tunnel through rock and soil, chewing out circular tunnels that may range in diameter of up to 35 or more feet. These Goliaths are powered by electrical motors that have a cutting head equipped with various metal attachments made of super hard alloys that cut through rock as the head rotates. The head rotates and the cutting tools dig into the rock, ripping and gouging it away. The excavated rock or muck is then passed by a conveyor assembly to the rear of the machine where it can be hauled away by truck or train. According to the Pacific Gas and Electric Company, utilizing a Robbins Company TBM to bore a 22,000-foot long, 24-foot diameter tunnel, it took a rate of 5 to 6 miles per year. However, in better conditions, some TBMs could bore at a rate of 10 miles per year or greater, roughly double the rate of the Pacific Gas and Electric Company. This would mean DUMs below China Lake and Edwards could be connected in as little as 5.5 years. Nuclear submarines were originally designed by Los Alamos National Lab. Sound familiar? The patents for such machines were filed, technical documents were written, but the project seemingly faded into obscurity. These fascinating machines work by melting through rock and soil, leaving neat, solidly glass-lined tunnels by vitrifying materials. Heat is supplied to the system via compact nuclear reactors that circulate liquid lithium from the reactor core to the tunnel face, melting rock in front of the machine. Cooled liquid lithium then circulates to the back of the machine alongside the exterior of the machine to cool surrounding rock as the machine is forced forward. Patents were first proposed by the Atomic Energy Commission and U.S. Energy R&D in 1972 and 1975. Further nuclear submarine patents in 1975 detailed tunnel systems of 12 meters or more in diameter. All but one of the inventors listed in the 3 patents above were from Los Alamos. Additionally, a 1973 Los Alamos study titled Systems and Cost Analysis for a Nuclear Submarine Tunnel Machine, a preliminary study, concluded nuclear submarines to be a cost-efficient solution to satisfy U.S. transportation tunnel demands.
So they can melt rock, y'all. Just melt right through it with these things.
If such an enormous tunnel system exists, it likely saw construction beginning around the early 1970s. The 1982 report of the workshop detailed the need for 400 miles of tunnels ranging from 2,500 to 3,500 feet for various purposes, including housing nuclear missiles. These tunnels were to be up to 16 feet in diameter with, quote, interconnecting passageways and adits, horizontal passageways, for storage, living quarters, and other needs, end quote. The location of such a network of tunnels, according to the New York Times, would be, quote, probably in the desert of the western United States. Both corporations were later on bought by Northrop Grumman. The 1985 BDM study is of particular interest here. Remember, if you will, earlier that same year, 20 to 25 May 1985 to be exact, BDM McLean also held the Advanced Theoretical Physics Conference. The meetings of this exclusive group were classified utilizing DOE controls. Notes of this conference were released by attendee Oki Shannon, who formerly served as manager for special projects at Los Alamos National Labs. This McLean, Virginia Secure Facility Group discussed myriad aspects of UFOs, including legacy programs and a major engineering project under Bobby Ray Inman. Viewers of my channel will absolutely recall Inman mentioned often as a senior UFO Legacy Operations member. At this time, the vice president of BDM was former Major General and founder of U.S. Army INSCOM Albert Stubblebine. Stubblebine will be mentioned again in this project, including how he was accused of engaging in UFO craft storage and material exploitation while head of Army intelligence at Fort Huachuca, Arizona. Interestingly, the Advanced Theoretical Working Group was spearheaded by U.S. Army Colonel John B. Alexander, who from 1982 to 1983 reported directly to Stubblebine. Additionally, recall how Philip J. Corso claimed a UFO working group was established in the mid-80s. According to Corso, this group saw ample funding from U.S. Army INSCOM General Stubblebine.
Yeah, so... That's why UAPGerb rocks, because you probably went from, if you weren't sure underground bases were a thing, to going, very detailed analysis, very well done analysis. He also referred to the Richard Doty trying to say that it was an AI voice that's told. He said that Lou Elizondo hired him to work counter intel for Space Force, and then later he said it was an AI voice. This is from Red Panda Koala's channel.
I was offered a job in 2019 by the United States Space Force, where Lou Elizondo worked, to work with him in disinformation. And I said, not no, but hell no. I'll never do that again. Did Lou bend the knee? Worked for him. I don't know what he did. You'd have to ask Lou. Okay.
So I mean, that didn't look like AI to me.
I was offered a job in 2019 by the United States Space Force, where Lou Elizondo worked, to work with him in disinformation. And I said, not no, but hell no. I'll never do that again. Did Lou bend the knee? Worked for him. I don't know what he did. You'd have to ask Lou. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty clearly him saying that and it not being altered or changed in any way. Kind of disappointing. But the thing is that if you trust anything Doty says, you're making a mistake right off the bat. Doty not only drove a man crazy, but seemed to take pride in the fact that he drove a man crazy. And that takes a particular kind of person, the kind of person that I wouldn't want to be around, I'll tell you that for sure. Yeah, I want to ask you, it's been, oh my gosh. It has to be close to a year now since this preview came out, and I'm wondering why we still haven't seen it. Do y'all remember this one?
The American people are ready to receive the truth.
Humanity is not the only intelligence in the universe.
Humanity is not the only intelligent species.
We are absolutely not alone.
Non-human intelligence exists. UAPs are real, they're here, and they're not human. I spent 25 years as a senior official with the CIA.
I worked on highly classified UAP programs.
28 years as an astrophysicist.
I served as the 4th Director of National Intelligence.
Director of Aviation Security in the National Security Council.
The 1-star admiral after 32 years of service.
People that come forward with this, I feel like they've taken their life in their own hands.
I was recruited to a highly sensitive government program that investigated unidentified aerial phenomenon.
For over 16 years, on behalf of the U.S. government, I worked as a senior intelligence official on the unidentified aerial phenomenon topic.
We learned that the U.S. government was involved in a long-running secret war with other nations to collect and reverse engineer vehicles not made by humans.
I have seen with my own eyes non-human craft and non-human beings.
So look at that thing. It's rotating. There's a whole fleet of them.
The first country that cracks the code on this technology will be the leader for years to come.
China has established its own version of a UAP task force.
You think for a second that they wouldn't consider using it to achieve their ends of domination?
This is similar to the Manhattan Project. This is the atomic weapon on steroids.
This is so secret. Very, very few people in our entire government have been allowed access to it.
Even presidents have been operating on a need-to-know basis, but that begins to ramp out of control.
It's not acceptable to have secret parts of government that no one ever sees.
You better be careful about a government that doesn't trust its people, because there's no telling what they'll pull on you.
This is the biggest discovery in human history.
You had information being locked away that could change the trajectory for species.
It has so many beneficial impacts, including clean energy.
We should have disclosure today. We should have disclosure tomorrow. The time has come.
What else you want to know?
That preview came out several months ago. over 6 months ago. And we have yet to see that film. What in the world is going on? Well, we got some word on X. Elizondo, represented by his lawyer Ivan Hanel, has filed a lawsuit in California against Dan Farah and wife at Reese Glendale, alleging that Dan Farah operated as an unregistered talent agent in violation of the California Talent Agencies Act. The complaint arises from Farah's involvement, though Farah Films and management, as well as wife at Reese's Glendale's role at YRG Partners in literary and media, in brokering Elizondo's imminent book deal, and appears to be an attempt to force renegotiation of the existing terms. Sorta, it's Lou's fault the production is delayed, but not why you think. And that's coming from Atemporal, posting on X. So very interesting. We have a situation where it's probably a legal problem, which is not surprising. And the fact that Elizondo is involved, well, that's not super surprising as well. There was some video that just came out with Richard Dolan talking about kind of Lou's blunder when he shared the fake photo and some of the other kind of blunders that he's made. I thought it would be interesting to share that here. Let's go ahead and check this out here.
Show a photograph of a UAP or a UFO during the presentation. I'm showing this. This is a better version from the X feed that the Fund for UAP Disclosure put out. So let's talk about this. So what he said specifically is this photograph I just received permission. He said, cast by a civilian pilot. Now this is why it's important. He said, taken from a civilian pilot. Potentially the object, he said, is anywhere from 600 to 1,000 feet diameter. He did emphasize, though, that he did not take the photograph and that it needed to be vetted. So we'll just say that much. Then, of course, not surprisingly, everyone just jumped in on this picture. Mick West, the debunker, said, look, this is very likely, very common desert irrigation circles, irrigation pits. We see them all the time when you're flying over, especially out in the Midwest. You see them on there. It's not a flying object, and said the supposed shadow is probably an adjacent field with a different coloration, creates an optical illusion of a hovering disk. Now, I'll just say, first of all, I am not going to jump into this fray. If I were looking at it casually, I would say it looks exactly like a hovering object with a shadow. And one of the reasons I would think that is that if they were two irrigation pits, one of them looks like it's blocking the road there. The white one looks like it's just covering up the road. Now, I'm sure that there are good skeptical answers to that. I don't know what they are. Now, more to the point, all right, the consensus out there is that this is a standard irrigation pit. I mean, this has been mercilessly ridiculed and mocked online. And, you know, you really do have to acknowledge here. I mean, yes, Lou did state he cannot vouch for the veracity of the photograph. He didn't take it. This is not vetted. But you really have to think here. This is the second time that he has stepped into something like this. This happened about less than a year ago, with another photograph that was shown not to be an actual UFO. So, you know, you really have to just recognize that this is a time for, you've got to be careful when you're putting evidence out there. This was not vetted. It is questionable evidence. And clearly the skeptics are going to jump all over it. You've got Representatives Luna and Burleson. They're staking political capital on this briefing, which included very significant claims about, you know, recovered non-terrestrial craft, NORAD detection capabilities. We'll get to that. So this distraction, that's really what this looks like it could be, is very likely to overshadow testimonies from other witnesses who are describing important encounters. Tim Gallaudet's one of them.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it when that video first came out. For someone of Lou's caliber to be showing that photo, it was just, it's not like me going to a UFO con being like, hey, check out this photo I just found in the middle of a book. Isn't this cool? Looks like a UFO. It's not, no, this was a gentleman that was, quote unquote running ATIP, even though that's been debunked at this point. We know he was not running ATIP. That was more of a hobby for him. Very interesting, the light that has come to shine on Luis Elizondo over time. And, you could even call it karma. Not everybody knows the story, but Manny 503 made a documentary about Luis Elizondo in 2022 and was essentially harassed by Elizondo and his crew, known as the Wolf Pack, I guess, at the time, who I understand are still around, maybe aren't harassing at such a public level now, but the things they would do and talk about in open spaces in YouTube was pretty wild. In fact, we got a little compilation here that was made by Manny 503. This is pretty interesting. Check this out.
When you go after and criticize Lou Elizondo, he doesn't come after you directly. Instead, he's got some very secondary ways to get at you and to strike back, but he's very vindictive and he will come after you.
Have you experienced that, Manny?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Since my documentary, in fact, it was within hours of the documentary coming out that I started to experience that. And it's been nonstop since. And we can get into that. This show had informed me that they would not let me use their clips. They were going to file copyright strikes against my channel to get the film taken down.
I mean, I worked closely with Lou. When Lou Elizondo got attacked by Area 503, I was the only person who stood up against Manny from Area 503. I even reached out to Lou Jimenez. He refused. I did copyright strikes, and then I worked with James Fox and others to get additional copyright strikes to get that shit taken down.
And that they were going to do everything in their power to stop me from speaking this truth that I had or putting this show out. So when the live premiere was going on, they came into my chat channel and were just flooding the chat with attacks and vitriol, saying that I was doxing Lou, that I was attacking his family, that I was going after his wife and his kids, things like that were just ridiculous and weren't even a part of the film at all. Three people got my personal information: Tom Fessler, the History Channel, and To the Stars Academy. And all of a sudden, this guy, Tom Fessler, and his producer on their live stream are talking about my real name, my address, my girlfriend, where I live, where my mother lives.
Until Thomas Fessler obtained my name in a legal document, my name had never been on the internet. And now it's being spread everywhere. For your karma, Lou.
But I do find it interesting that in 7 or 8 years, nobody ever doxed me, nobody ever found me. And just a few weeks after I had to give legal papers to YouTube to a false copyright claim, who's buddies with some of these assholes, suddenly everybody's got all my personal information, my home address and everything.
Go back to where before they got that information, the 72 hours after Who's Lou had been released, Lou Elizondo's on the Tom Fessler show answering questions about my show. And he just goes on and he riles them up. He's like, you guys are my wolf pack. You guys, I'm looking over at my side. You guys, I'm glad that you're here defending me and fighting for me.
Together and support this great man and what he's doing. There's some real haters out there. There's some people.
This process to go forward, you kind of need to put a little pressure on the people that are hampering this conversation from moving forward further in the public arena. Well, they're sitting behind a keyboard, anonymity
in their mom's house.
That doesn't last forever with with that, and they motivated some people, and Lou is not going to take any action, but I dare say that there are people that will find the motivation on their own cognizance to bring him. So if you guys want to see more Lou interviews out there more often or at all, I suggest you guys, take a position on this, be part of the solution, not part of the problem, and put some pressure on these people to get them to stop. I don't want to say much more because I don't want to incriminate myself.
This is a team effort, and I look to my shoulder right and left, and I see all of you. So thank you for being along, on this journey.
We just wanted you to know that the pack has your back too.
Oh yeah.
10-4, appreciate it, Rob, more than you know. It really, it helped.
Yeah, so it started when the film first came out, but it does continue to this day. There's organized groups out there of people that are championing for Lou Elizondo on social media, and if you question his narrative, then they go out and they take it upon themselves to try to gang bully, gang stalk, and harass you into silence to create this echo chamber, specifically on UFO Twitter. It's something that's become real apparent in the last few months. People are really starting to become wise to it. And I've called it out kind of since day one. And a lot of times people will gaslight me and they're like, oh, you're just being paranoid. Like there's no group of people out there. And it's come to light that, yeah, there is. There's actual groups of people who have Discord servers and Facebook groups who do this. And I've pointed out also that Elizondo is well aware of it. He's been made aware of it.
I have texted Lou. I've told him about KMF. He still doesn't unfollow him. That bugs me. Right. Yeah, it is strange. And like, look, like, you're not the only one who's noticed that, right? Which hopefully makes you feel a bit better, RPK. Like I've had conversations with some like really influential UFO people who aren't going to say shit publicly, but absolutely find it disturbing that Lou Elizondo still follows KMF.
And using his own confirmed sock puppet accounts, which is something that he's been caught doing multiple times, creating a sock puppet account, which I don't know if people know what those are. It's just it's a fake account that's not linked to his own personal account, his official account, but he uses that to interact with people. And that's where that name Faceless Bureaucrat that we spoke about earlier came out, is that was the name of one of his sock puppet accounts that he used for years. There are other people out there who have been the targets of these people, and it's been horrific. I've seen, people's immediate family members, their grandparents, their wives, their children, their minor children gone after, where people post pictures of somebody's, child in their school and is like, oh, how's so-and-so doing? Or name the mascot of their school as a veiled way to try to intimidate someone into not questioning Elizondo. And it's really kind of perplexing, because you don't really see that in ufology too often. I mean, like I try to go back and think about people disagreeing about Bob Lazar 6 or 7 years ago, and somebody getting doxxed and harassed over, whether they believe Bob Lazar's story or they don't.
If you're not up on the X stuff, see, I had to get up on the X stuff recently because apparently I was out of the loop. But yes, very worried about his status and how he's perceived, or at least was. Very concerned about folks being critical. I encourage you to go watch the Manny 503 doc, Who is Lou? Because from the beginning, I had a guest on, Luis Cayetano. I'm going to have him on again here soon. Wrote the paper will co-author the paper on ResearchGate regarding the ATIP OSAP mix-up, and the fact that Elizondo, that was a hobby for him. That wasn't his job. So you can see right out of the gate, he's misleading and being dishonest. And so being very critical and very attentive to those around him that were being critical of him and asking questions of him. This piece of an interview right here I found just absolutely shocking.
Yet you use it because it's helpful and effective, because you're not quite comfortable providing out your personal information. I get it, and I respect that.
But the same holds true for other people. The same feelings and concerns and fears you may have is precisely the same concerns and fears that other people have, and probably including myself.
That's a great, I mean,
Yeah,
I feel like it's a soft yes, but I think it's a great answer, man. And yeah, what were you gonna say, rather?
Well, yeah,
Hopefully it's not a crime, right?
No, it's definitely not a crime. That's for sure.
But there is kind of a weird dynamic going on in UFO Twitter, and I think that there was an account that was almost an open secret that was yours, and I'm not sure if this one actually was yours or not. But there's a lot of people on your supporters who would kind of clamor and onto what that would say, and it kind of rallying cry, and it seemed to kind of stoke fires of division rather than uniting people. And frankly, I found that a little disappointing if that account really was yours. But I do understand.
Well, I don't know. You haven't asked me. And let me ask you this:
bureaucrat one or something like that.
I see that on there right now. That is not me right now. I'll tell you that. That is not me.
It was that account was deleted, I think, in November, and someone took it over. So that account that's posting right now definitely isn't you. But
so let me ask you another question, if I may, rather. If I called your mother a hooker, how would you? And I'm being honest. I'm not saying that. I'm asking you hypothetically, if I were to call your mother a prostitute, or your partner, or your kid, how would you feel about that?
What the fuck, man? So he asked him if that's his account. And if you listen to the verbiage very carefully, he said that right now is not my account. Said it very fastly, thinking it wouldn't be caught. Rather said, well, no, not your account now, but in the past, it's pretty much been confirmed that it was. The response: what if I called your wife a whore or your kids? What the fuck, man? That's out of control. That's like way too far, way across the line, and something somebody does to try to throw you off and just get you to comply because you're so shocked by what they had to say. It's not good. And so I don't really feel bad about the bad press Elizondo's getting right now. I think the last time I saw him was on News Nation, and he was no longer the UFO UAP guy. He was the drone guy, talking about drones coming across the Mexican-U.S. border for cartels delivering drugs. So maybe a little fall from grace for Elizondo, maybe not so much the UAP UFO guy. And quite frankly, I don't think he was supposed to be. I mean, put it down in the comments if you think I'm wrong, if you think I'm way off base, but don't think that was the guy we wanted bringing disclosure. A guy that's spent an entire career lying and torturing people. Moving on, let's check out something a little positive. This was at the PSI games. Now, this is a kind of like a psionic telepathy type conference. I know there's a few people on X that I've spoken with that are there, that went there, are having a great experience. There was a presentation there that was absolutely stunning. This Dahlia woman got every single color that they brought up while she was blindfolded correct. It's hard to, you just have to see this to believe it. Absolutely fascinating.
All right, timer set. Dahlia, are you ready? Ready. On your mark, get set, go.
Green.
All right, that's great playing, everybody.
Get out!
Are you ready? Yeah, I know. All right, ready? On your mark, get set, go.
Right. I think this is what is known as mind control.
Are you ready? On your mark, get set. On your mark, get set, go. Are you ready? On your mark, get set, go. The timer doesn't start. By the time you hit it, are you ready? This is amazing. All right. You ready? On your mark.
How did you know that? What did you say?
She just said in my ear, he's blocking me. On your mark, kid, it's okay. Dinner's on me tonight. This is just amazing. Amazing. You've earned it. You're a rock star. Are you ready to go? Okay. On your mark, get set, go. Hakeem's going to be in the next building here in a second. Are you ready? There's no more stage left, by the way. Hakeem is over with the judges, just so you know. Oh, you probably knew that. Okay, you ready? Are you ready? Everybody ready? On your mark, get set, go.
So that's cool. Right. You could feel the excitement in the crowd. I know they do things to try to isolate and make it so there can't be any cheating involved. There's always ways to cheat, sure. From what I understand, Dahlia's done some other really impressive things as well. Someone I'm going to have to look a little bit more into for sure. So today, what did we learn? We learned that 3i Atlas is a comet and that scientists will say just about anything to get funding. We also learned that Luis Elizondo is reaping what he sows at this point, which is probably a good thing. Jake Barber, did he really have a come to Jesus moment and cross over from the dark to the light? Or is he continuing doing the dark work under the guise of the light, right? Like, is he, because we hear, actually what we don't hear a lot about right now is Skywatcher, and we know that he got heavily involved right around the time they started doing the public thing, and then they started kind of rewinding that a little bit. According to a posting on Reddit, of course, we don't know if we can trust these things, but according to a posting on Reddit, they're really backing off the psionics. They had everybody sign non-disclosure agreements after their second episode, and they seem to really be battening down the hatches there. Interesting stuff. We'll have to get into that more on our next episode. Stay tuned. We got a couple more interviews coming up. I've got an exciting interview coming up with a good friend of mine, Cruz, who is a devout Catholic, and we are going to get into some questions out there that folks have had about the alien demon thing, possession, demonic possession. We're also going to get into some of the cool stuff like miracles. What's that all about? What is a saint? You know, basic stuff like that folks like me just aren't sure about. Hope you'll get something good out of that. We're also going to talk about UFOs and the Vatican's history with that, so it should be really exciting. I'm going to have on Luis Cayetano, one of our favorite guests on the show. His last episode got the most likes I've gotten on an episode yet. Loved having him on. Very insightful human being, very intelligent human being. He runs a website, Ufology is Corrupt. Again, not saying it's all corrupt, but there seems to be a lot of, for lack of a better term, fuckery going on in the community. And we're seeing it more and more every single day, from Luis Elizondo to these quote-unquote whistleblowers running X spaces out of prison. Yeah, for real. So at any rate, thanks for joining us for the Gabriel Speaks podcast. I'm so glad you came. Checked us out. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit the little bell so you get the notifications. And we'll see you next time.